It started on a cold Tuesday morning, one of those dreary gray sky days that hung low over campus like a warning. You could feel the tension before the lecture even began. A row of students shuffled into Hall A13, the largest lecture theater in the Law and Public Policy Department, some with earbuds still in, others dragging themselves to the back row. And at the center of it all, one seat remained boldly occupied near the front. A young black woman, poised, focused, head held high. Her name was Maya Ellis, and 19 years old. Sophomore, honors student. Braids tucked neatly into a low bun. No designer clothes, no loud accessories. Just a plain hoodie jeans and eyes that had clearly seen more than most her age. She didn't say much, but when she did, every word landed with purpose. But none of that seemed to matter today. Because today, Professor Preston Halbridge was in a mood. Halbridge, mid-50s, sharply dressed, Oxford educated, a smug smirk always curled at the corner of his mouth. The kind of man who loved the sound of his own voice, especially when he was correcting someone. He ruled his classroom with intellectual elitism, passive-aggressive jabs, and a quiet disdain for anyone he deemed unqualified. And today, for some reason, that person was Maya. "Miss Ellis," he began. "Not 5 minutes into the lecture, would you care to enlighten us with your interpretation of the Dobson v. Clark ruling? I assume you've read the material, unless reading comprehension proved too challenging this week." A hush fell over the lecture hall. Some students froze mid-note. Others looked away awkwardly. Maya looked up slowly, meeting his eyes unfazed. "Yes, Professor," she said calmly. Dobson v. Clark established precedent regarding dual jurisdictional claims. Specifically, it clarified that a state-level settlement can't override a pending federal investigation when civil rights violations are in question. There was nothing incorrect in her answer. Not even close. But Halbridge scoffed. "Reciting the syllabus is not the same as understanding it," he replied, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Try again, but this time tell us something you didn't Google 5 minutes before class." Maya's jaw tightened, but she didn't break. "I didn't Google it. I studied it. And yet your response was painfully shallow," he continued, pacing the stage. This is the problem with students these days. They parrot words without grasping the core principles. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Not from everyone, but enough to sting. Maya sat still, silent, shoulders squared. She didn't look down. She didn't lash out. But something in her eyes flickered. You could almost hear the voice in the back of her head, the voice that had told her ever since she was a child. You don't get to show anger, you show excellence. Because Maya knew the truth. And Halbridge didn't. Not yet. The class continued with a cloud hanging over it. Halbridge moved on to other topics, but the message was clear: he had chosen his target. His tone was sharper when he looked in Maya's direction, his patience thinner. He never called on her again that hour, but his presence loomed over her desk like a shadow. And then came the group exercise. "Pair off," he said briskly. "Draft a preliminary motion defending the plaintiff in the hypothetical Brooks v. Glenwood case. It's due in 20 minutes. Naturally, nobody moved toward Maya. Some didn't want to get dragged down by someone the professor had already humiliated. Others simply didn't want to work with her and didn't feel the need to pretend otherwise. Maya calmly slid her chair aside and began writing alone. She didn't ask, didn't beg. She just did the work, as always. But that wasn't good enough for Halbridge. He walked by, glanced at her paper, and said just loudly enough, "You may want to consider a career outside the legal field, Miss Ellis. There are other ways to contribute. Not everyone is cut out for jurisprudence." That was it, the final line. The one that made people glance around in discomfort. The line that made even the quietest students widen their eyes, because that wasn't education anymore. That was something else. That was deliberate. That was personal. But Maya? She just looked up slowly and met his eyes with an expression not of anger, but of certainty. Not defiance, not fear. Just the quiet strength of someone who knew exactly who she was and exactly who he was talking to. But Halbridge had no clue, not yet. She packed her things with grace. The class ended. The murmurs began. People were whispering in hallways, some laughing, some shaking their heads. But nobody forgot the look she gave him as she walked out of that room. Because something in it said, "You've made a mistake." And tomorrow they would find out just how big a mistake it was. The following day, the air in Hall A13 was thick with anticipation. Whispers had spread like wildfire across campus. Students exchanged glances, their curiosity piqued by the previous day's events. Maya Ellis entered the lecture hall with the same composed demeanor, her eyes reflecting a quiet strength. Professor Preston Halbridge stood at the podium, his expression unreadable. As the lecture commenced, his tone was sharper, his critiques more pointed. He seemed determined to reassert his authority, directing subtle jabs at Maya under the guise of academic rigor. "Miss Ellis," he called out, "perhaps you'd like to enlighten us on the implications of the recent Supreme Court ruling." Maya responded with clarity and precision, her analysis demonstrating a deep understanding of the subject matter. Yet Halbridge dismissed her insights with a condescending smile, questioning her interpretation and suggesting a lack of depth in her comprehension. The class watched in discomfort as the exchange unfolded. Some students shifted uneasily in their seats, sensing the underlying tension. Maya, however, remained unflinching, her gaze steady, her posture unwavering. After class, as students gathered their belongings, a few approached Maya, offering words of support. She thanked them graciously, her demeanor calm and collected. Later that evening, Maya sat in the campus library, engrossed in her studies. A fellow student, intrigued by her composed response to Halbridge's provocations, struck up a conversation. "You're handling this situation with remarkable poise," the student remarked. "Most people would have lost their cool by now." Maya smiled softly. "I've learned that maintaining composure often speaks louder than words." As the days progressed, Halbridge's behavior grew increasingly antagonistic. He challenged Maya's contributions in class, questioned her capabilities, and made veiled comments about her background. Despite this, Maya continued to excel academically, her resilience unwavering. One afternoon during a heated classroom debate, Halbridge attempted to undermine Maya's argument by questioning her sources. Maya calmly reached into her bag and produced a document, handing it to him. Halbridge's eyes scanned the paper, his expression shifting from skepticism to surprise. The document bore the official seal of the State Attorney General's office, accompanied by a note of commendation addressed to Maya for her contributions to a recent legal initiative. The room fell silent as Halbridge handed back the document, his demeanor noticeably altered. Maya met his gaze, her expression serene. The revelation sent ripples through the student body. Conversations buzzed with speculation about Maya's connections and the implications of Halbridge's treatment of her. As the week drew to a close, Maya received an invitation to speak at a campus event on diversity and inclusion. During her speech, she shared her experiences, emphasizing the importance of resilience and the dangers of making assumptions based on appearances. Her words resonated deeply with the audience, sparking discussions about bias privilege and the need for systemic change within academic institutions. The lecture hall buzzed with anticipation. Students whispered among themselves, casting curious glances toward Maya Ellis. The tension was palpable, a storm brewing beneath the surface. Professor Halbridge entered, his demeanor as stern as ever. He began the lecture, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Today we delve into the complexities of constitutional law," he announced, eyes scanning the room before settling on Maya. "Miss Ellis," he called out, "perhaps you can enlighten us on the nuances of the 14th Amendment." Maya stood, her posture poised, eyes unwavering. "Certainly, Professor," she replied, articulating a comprehensive analysis that left the room in stunned silence. Halbridge smirked, attempting to undermine her. "Impressive recitation," he sneered, "but understanding requires more than memorization." The class shifted uncomfortably. Maya remained composed, her gaze steady. After the lecture, whispers turned into conversations. Students questioned Halbridge's behavior, his relentless targeting of Maya. The atmosphere grew charged, a collective unease settling over the campus. Days later, a university symposium on social justice was announced. Maya was listed as a keynote speaker. The auditorium filled quickly, students and faculty eager to hear her speak. As she approached the podium, A hush fell over the crowd. Maya began, her voice resonant. "Education is the cornerstone of progress," she stated. "But when bias infiltrates our institutions, it erodes the very foundation we stand upon." She recounted her experiences, the subtle and overt discrimination she faced. The audience listened intently, the weight of her words sinking in. Then she paused, reaching into her bag. She held up an official badge, the emblem of the State Attorney General's office gleaming under the lights. "My name is Maya Ellis," she declared, "and I am the daughter of the State Attorney General." Gasps echoed through the auditorium. The revelation sent shockwaves through the university community. News spread rapidly. Media outlets picked up the story headlines, highlighting the professor's misconduct and Maya's resilience. The university launched an investigation, and Halbridge faced disciplinary action. Maya's courage ignited a movement. Students organized forums advocating for systemic change. The university implemented new policies to address discrimination and promote inclusivity. Maya's story became a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of standing up against injustice. The university campus buzzed with anticipation. News of Professor Halbridge's discriminatory behavior had spread beyond the lecture halls, igniting discussions about systemic bias in academia. Students organized rallies demanding accountability and reform. The administration, under pressure, launched a formal investigation into the allegations. Testimonies from students painted a clear picture of a pattern of condescension and bias. The evidence was irrefutable. Professor Halbridge was summoned to a disciplinary hearing. The once confident educator now faced a panel scrutinizing his actions. He attempted to defend his behavior as rigorous academic standards, but the testimonies told a different story. The verdict was clear. Professor Halbridge was found guilty of discriminatory conduct and was dismissed from his position. The university issued a public apology to Maya Ellis and announced new initiatives to promote inclusivity and diversity. Maya, now recognized not just as the daughter of the State Attorney General, but as a symbol of resilience, continued her studies with renewed determination. Her experience became a catalyst for change, inspiring others to stand against injustice.